Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £2 billion every year. That's almost £6 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing, and every year it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing 15 fake claims every hour. Armed with covert surveillance systems,
that's the subject out the vehicle,
sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a highly skilled, dedicated police unit.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
They're catching the criminals red-handed.
Don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers, and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Today, the jaw-dropping story of how far one man was prepared to go in order to defraud an insurance company.
In order for his biggest fraud to be successful, he's had to kill a man.
The solicitor who thought she was above the law but lost everything.
She's been struck off. All this just demonstrates was how greedy she was.
And IFED carry out raids in 20 different locations in their biggest operation this year.
My name's Amin Tyler, I'm a police officer. You just stop what you're doing, as in take your hands off the computer.
With millions of pounds lost every day in the UK through insurance fraud, there are many stories of people going to extraordinary lengths in order to make a claim. But in 2012, West Midlands Police dealt with a case of fraud which defied belief. Detective Inspector Warren Hines was the senior officer on the investigation.
On the morning of the 28th of November 2012, West Midlands Police were alerted that there was a body floating in the Swan Pool in Sandwell Valley Country Park, which is a large park just outside West Bromwich in Birmingham. The body appeared to be of a early middle-age Asian male, and he died as a result of a significant wound to his throat.
An autopsy revealed that this was anything but an accident. And so West Midlands Police found themselves dealing with a murder case. The first step was to identify the victim.
Jasper Baines was a man who was born and brought up in the West Bromwich area, close to where he met his death. Fair to say he'd probably had a few ups and downs in his life, and sometime in 2006 he emigrated to Canada. Didn't return to England till the tail end of 2011. He'd always worked, but towards the end of his life, he was living a transient existence, really. He was of no fixed abode. He was dabbling in drugs, drinking too much. Basically, needed to get himself sorted out.
It's fair to say that Jasper Singh had his problems, but that didn't explain why anyone would want to take his life.
There was one person that really was of interest to me, and that was a chap called Jamie Ray. What our investigations revealed was that in 2006, Jasper, our victim, had borrowed £14,000 off Jamie Ray, who was a school friend. They'd grown up in the local area together. The intention was that £14,000 debt would be paid back in the near future, but it wasn't. Jasper emigrated to Canada to be with his family and never paid Jamie Ray any of the money back. Jamie Ray, towards the end of 2012 also, his own financial situation was rapidly deteriorating. And he was a man that needed some money.
With Ray in financial difficulty and still owed a lot of money by Jasper, it was certainly possible that there could be some bad feelings. But what detectives discovered next turned Ray into a prime suspect.
Jamie Ray had assumed our victim's identity when he left for Canada. While he had assumed his identity, he'd perpetrated a number of frauds. One was a mortgage fraud which enabled him to buy a house in West Bromwich. But interestingly, he also took out a life insurance policy, which if it had paid out, would have benefited Jamie Ray's children to the sum of just under £320,000.
It was a chilling discovery. And with a fraudulent life insurance policy which paid out over £300,000 to Ray's children in the event of Jasper's death, it's an understatement to say that the evidence was stacked against him.
Jamie Ray's a persistent fraudster, really. But most of his offending was fairly low level, really. This life insurance policy that he'd taken out really would have been the equivalent of a lottery win to him. It was in a completely different league. But it's fair to say, with that and the house that he'd purchased, and obviously, you know, the other policies of insurance that he'd taken out in relation to the house, had he been successful, he'd have benefited to just over £370,000. He would have been quite a wealthy man.
There was no disputing that Ray had a motive. And as West Midlands Police continued to investigate the case, everything pointed to Ray being the culprit of this despicable crime.
On the night of the 27th of November, Jamie Ray had CCTV cameras at the front and rear of his house. Now those would show who was coming and going from his address. And just after 6:30 in the evening, the camera on the front of the house gets turned away. Now that becomes important later because his assertion, once he was arrested, was that he was at home all night. He hadn't actually been out.
And when the police checked Ray's mobile phone records, it confirmed the police's suspicions.
Jamie Ray contacted Jasper and lured him during the course of a couple of phone calls and a number of text messages to Sandwell Valley Country Park. The most logical route is down a one-way street and down a little alleyway. And the only conclusion you can draw from that is that Jasper has been lured to this remote location by somebody that he knows and somebody that he thinks he can trust. That person was Jamie Ray.
With the evidence piling up against Ray, West Midlands Police were certain they had their man.
The evidence that we had was all circumstantial. However, when you take it all together, it presents a very, very compelling picture. The last phone call that ever was received by our victim was made by a telephone that Jamie Ray had sole control of. We had the debt from 2006. We had the mortgage fraud perpetrated in the victim's name, and also the big one was the life insurance policy. Jamie Ray stood to benefit to the tune of just under £320,000 in the advent of Jasper's death. And that, to my mind, was a really powerful motive for murder.
Incredibly, greed had led a man to kill a childhood friend for the sake of a few £100,000. And in April 2012, Jamie Ray was arrested for fraud and the murder of Jasper Singh.
Jamie Ray stood trial at the start of 2014 at Wolverhampton Crown Court. At the end of the trial, the presiding judge said just what a cold-hearted, callous and brutal killing this was. The sentence that Jamie Ray was given was life imprisonment, and the minimum term he would have to serve before being eligible for parole was 27 years. The judge also gave him 4.5 years to run alongside that life sentence for the Fraud Act offences. So a significant sentence, but one that's wholly right in the circumstances. I do feel quite satisfied that Jamie Ray is now going to be accountable for his actions and spend a lot of time in prison as a result. It's the right place for him to be.
It's hard to believe that a brutal murder could be connected with insurance fraud, but this case demonstrates the extreme lengths that some people are prepared to go to.
What sets Jamie Ray apart from your average fraudster is that he's sort of taken the next step up, if you like. In order for his biggest fraud to be successful, he's had to kill a man. That would take a certain amount of planning, wouldn't it? Clearly, he has planned the murder. Clearly, he had planned to claim on the life insurance policy. I guess at the time that he'd gone through with it all, he didn't expect to be stood at Wolverhampton Crown Court being sentenced to life imprisonment.
Although this is a very unusual case, Warren is keen to point out that any type of fraud can result in a brush with the law.
There's a bit of a myth generally amongst people who perpetrate fraud that the police aren't interested, that we, you know, if anybody reports fraud to us, we sort of encourage them to go to the bank and report it there, and the bank will do their investigations. Nothing could be further from the truth. Fraud's a crime and the police are very interested in it.
Still to come, dodgy driving.
It's a very dangerous manoeuvre, and it's also not fair to then say that the bus has drifted into you.
And IFED get their hands on some high-octane evidence. Insurance fraud is nothing new, and is committed by people from all walks of life. However, there are some fraudsters who you really think would know better. Back in 2004, Allianz dealt with a case that ended up having lifelong consequences for the claimant, who, believe it or not, was a solicitor.
We received a claim from Mrs. Jasper Singh relating to an injury that she alleged that she sustained while slipping on a wet floor in a shopping mall. The injuries that she told us that she'd suffered were back injuries, and she was alleging that there were no signs warning people of a wet floor. But on investigation that we discovered, and we talked to a number of people who worked there and other witnesses, that they all saw the signs very clearly labelled to say that there was a wet floor there.
With any accident, it's not uncommon to have conflicting versions of events from the parties involved. But as someone in the legal profession, Mrs. Sipasand would have known that to back up her claim, what she really needed was an independent witness. So, you'll never guess what happened next.
Initially, we resisted making any payment, but sometime down the line, we received an independent witness statement that Mrs. Sipasand had provided.
An account from an independent witness can often be the deciding factor in whether or not a claim is successful, and this case was no different.
The witness statement was made by a Mrs. Singh, and she would say in her statement that she was passing by and she saw the fall, and that she was absolutely certain that there was no signage in place. At that point, we settled the claim, and as far as we were concerned, the case was completed and we closed our file.
Now, so far, it all sounds routine. An accident, with an independent witness who steps forward, gives an honest account of what happened, which leads to the claim being paid. But this story has a rather interesting twist.
2 years later, we received a call from another insurer advising us that they'd received a claim, again from Mrs. Sipasand, and this related to a motor vehicle accident that she'd had with a parked car. The interesting aspect to this was the other party was none other than the independent witness that featured in the claim that she submitted against us 4 years previously.
Now there's a coincidence. They say lightning never strikes in the same place twice. Well, it did for Mrs. Sipasand. But Allianz weren't convinced.
The chances of the same individuals being involved in completely separate incidents, one being a sort of a slip and trip type accident, another one being a car accident, 5-6 years apart, it's beyond coincidence.
Smelling a rat, Allianz decided to do some digging around.
We were able to obtain references from employers and also gather some email evidence that clearly showed that these two individuals had been friends for a very, very long time.
Although they'd been found out, this pair of fraudster friends had stood to make a lot of money from their lies and deceit.
Had Mrs. Sipasand been successful in both attempts, she would have received around £35,000.
But for Mrs. Sipasand, being caught out was just the beginning of a downward spiral.
The police were very, very quick and very keen to take the case on, and it proceeded to court where Mrs. Sipasand and Mrs. Singh were both convicted of fraud-related offences. Mrs. Sipasand received a 12-month custodial sentence, which was suspended for 2 years. Mrs. Singh received 8 months for the first incident and another 12 months for the second, but this was also suspended for 2 years.
As a solicitor, Mrs. Sipasand was in the business of upholding the law, but having been found guilty of breaking it herself, the consequences were life-changing.
Mrs. Sipasand essentially lost everything. She's been struck off. She can no longer act as a solicitor. So was it really worth it?
As with so many other cases of insurance fraud, the motive behind Mrs. Sipasand's actions was nothing more than greed.
Had she just stuck with the first claim, that was paid, and she never would have hit the radars of the insurance companies. But the fact she then went on to commit a second fraud and worked with the same people, I think was her undoing. And to me, all this just demonstrates was how greedy she was.
People often think insurance fraud is easy to get away with, but this case illustrates this is far from the truth.
This is a really good example which demonstrates how insurance companies do talk to each other, especially around preventing fraud. We have our systems, we share information, we regularly liaise with each other. there's a lot more chance nowadays you'll get caught.
With the cost of insurance fraud escalating, the City of London Police joined the fight in January 2012, when they formed an elite squad known as the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department.
I would say to anyone who's considering committing insurance fraud that now this is no longer a crime without consequence that it may have been in the past. There is a dedicated 40-strong unit known as IFED that work 24/7 hunting down insurance fraudsters.
IFED have made over 450 arrests and saved millions of pounds in fraudulent insurance claims, money which ultimately goes back into our pockets. From now on, fraudsters need to watch their backs.
So if you're thinking about it, I suggest think again. There's every chance you'll get an IFED detective come knocking on your front door.
It's early morning, and IFED are about to launch one of their biggest operations to date, with 20 warrants being executed in simultaneous raids across the country, as they attempt to bring down a suspected car insurance scam. Aman Taylor is in charge of one of the units.
The person we're looking at today is the Director and Chief Engineer of a vehicle assessor company. We're looking for forged documents that have been submitted as part of a claim to the insurance company relating to credit hire.
Because of the types of vehicles involved with this particular case, IFED are dealing with large sums of money.
Looking through the list of vehicles that we're looking at, quite a lot of them are high-end vehicles, BMWs, Mercedes. There's a couple of Porsches, Aston Martins, that sort of thing on the list. There are a couple of lower-end vehicles, but the majority of them are sort of higher-end, sort of what you class as like prestige cars, expensive cars, because they can claim a higher rate of credit hire and they can charge a lot more for the more expensive cars.
Carrying out multiple raids simultaneously requires a great deal of planning, resources and communication. But as Aman explains, the potential benefits far outweigh the difficulties of organising such a huge operation.
This morning it's all going to be planned around the same sort of time. We're going to be looking at going to the addresses at the same sort of time. From our point of view, it's the best way of doing it so that we can secure all the evidence that we can without allowing someone the chance to dispose of anything.
Having arrived at the location and liaised with the other units, it's time for the raids to begin. So Aman leads his team in.
Morning, my name's Aman Taylor. I'm a police officer from the City of London Police. We're looking for... Yeah? He's not here. Do you know where he is?
He's shouting, flicking.
Is he? Can I just for a minute, you just stop what you're doing, as in take your hands off the computer? We've got a warrant to search his premises, all right, in relation to an investigation into a credit hire company. So what we're going to do, we're going to have officers here that are going to search for some documents that they're looking for. That's covered under a warrant, and we'll give you a notice which explains the reasons why we're here and the powers that has been used to search for those documents. But I still need to speak to... Is he going to be out for the whole day, do you know? Yeah, okay, all right. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it then. Have you got a contact number for him, a mobile number or something like that? Yeah, okay, all right. So what I ask you that you don't do for the time being is you don't make any phone calls or use the computers. We'll just leave them as they are for now.
The suspect that Aman needs to speak to might not be here, but that doesn't mean IFED's work here is done. The team begins a systematic search of the office, looking for documentation and any other evidence that relates to this suspected fraud. Meanwhile, Aman leaves to see if he can track down the suspect.
We're going to the home address now to try and see if our suspect is at the home address. So that is the next plan of attack. And then if he's not, what I'll look to do is I've got a phone number for him now. So I'll look to phone him, arrange for him to come to the address so that we can search, then take him to the police station. That's the plan. Is that end one?
A short drive later, and Aman has arrived. But will he get his man this time?
Morning.
Yeah, but he's not here.
He's not here?
No.
I've got a warrant to search the premises.
The suspect isn't home. But as they're here, Aman and his colleague give the house a quick sweep for anything which relates to the case.
He's shown us round, there's no office in there, so we don't need to search. So what I do now is I contact him, arrange for him to come to the police station so he can be interviewed. My name's Alan Taylor, I'm from the City of London Police. We've been to your business address, and I've just been to your home address. We need to speak to you regarding some assessments you've done on vehicles. Unfortunately, you're going to have to do it today, because today is the day we're doing it. We've got officers at your business address that are searching now and looking for some documentation relating to the investigation, so you are going to have to do it today.
The suspect has agreed to attend an interview at the police station later on. And word has come through from a man's team that the search at the office has gone well.
We're happy with how it's gone so far. We've got all the original documentation that we were looking for, and we've arranged for him to come in, so overall it's gone very well.
IFED has seized a number of documents and a PC tower from the office, which will be analysed by computer experts for any evidence relating to the case.
He knows that we're on to him, he knows that he's got to come in for an interview. Now, I've spoken with him, we've made the arrangement, so if he then breaks that arrangement, then we'll go to his home address and arrest him.
Still to come, IFED's investigation gets off the ground as they remove suspected evidence at another one of the raid locations.
Just recovered a Ferrari, which is worth in excess of £150,000.
You know how it is. You're in the car, you're running late, and you think you might just make it. And then you get stuck behind a bus. Impatiently, you go for the overtake, only to misjudge it and collide with the bus. Cars driving across and into buses, otherwise known as drifting, is something that bus operators like First Group see on a regular basis. And it's a far bigger problem than you might think.
These are claims where people will try to race across and get in front of the bus. They will often exceed the speed limit because the buses tend to be travelling at it, so they tend to try and get around the front. Often they can then find themselves with the traffic in front of them slowing down, so they then in turn have to slow down, and there will be collisions.
Drivers who do this are not only putting the safety of themselves at risk, but also the safety of other road users, including the bus and its passengers.
What they're actually doing is they're pulling across and reducing the braking distance of a bus, or sometimes they're pulling in far too sharply and actually striking the front of the bus with their own vehicles.
Of course, when manoeuvres like this go wrong, which they frequently do, more often than not, it's the bus driver who's accused of being at fault.
And then when they put their claim in, they're alleging that the bus has deviated from its current lane and swerved into the side or the back of the car.
A classic example of this happened in 2012, when an impatient motorist just couldn't wait to get past one of First Group's buses. Before the collision takes place, you can see the driver of the white car shaping up to go round the bus, even though there are double white lines on the road, which mean overtaking is not allowed. As the traffic gets moving again, the driver goes for the overtake. But what they didn't bank on was the island in the middle of the road. Unsurprisingly, the car doesn't make it through the gap and collides with the bus. It wasn't long before First Group heard from the driver's insurance company. And in his version of events, the bus had pulled into him and the bus driver was to blame. But of course, it isn't always just the damage to their vehicles that drivers will submit claims for.
We'll regularly see claims come in for incidents of this nature. There will invariably be a whiplash injury claim. You've got the damage to the vehicle, all through their own fault really, although they're obviously going to try and pin it on the bus company and claim their money back, and it's just not fair to do so.
Both occupants of the white car submitted personal injury claims. But thanks to the CCTV footage, the entire claim was rejected. But incidents like this are nothing new.
There's a number of types of ways that these people will try and cut in front of the buses. They'll either speed up and cut in front and then brake. Alternatively, they will just slowly drift over into the bus, actually colliding with it sometimes, or just very close and just missing the front of the bus. Either way, it's a very dangerous manoeuvre. And it's also not fair to then say that the bus has drifted into you when we can often prove that's just not the case.
Some buses are equipped with as many as 16 CCTV cameras, covering every angle inside and outside the bus. The reason they're there is to ensure the safety of the driver and passengers. Although in the event of a collision, they can come in very handy when it comes to proving who's at fault.
I think these individuals tend to be someone who's come across a situation, put themselves in a situation, the vehicle's been damaged, they're not prepared to accept responsibility for themselves, so they're going to try and pin the blame on someone else. It's not always going to be possible for them to do that, and eventually we will find out if they're lying.
So, to anyone out there who thinks that a claim like this could be their ticket to some easy money, Lee has some words of advice.
I would suggest to drivers that are thinking of putting in these types of claims, be aware of your facts, because if you're saying that the bus has pulled into you, invariably the bus is in a bus lane, there's no reason for that bus to have moved, which is going to make us suspicious to begin with, and we've got CCTV, so we will find out what actually happened.
Today, IFED have carried out their biggest operation this year, with teams raiding 20 different locations as they attempt to bring down a suspected motor insurance scam.
We've got a warrant to search these premises, so for the time being, you don't make any phone calls or use the computers. We just leave them as they are for now.
After a slow start, a man Taylor managed to track down his suspect, who agreed to attend the police station for interviewing. A man's team also seized documents and computer equipment thought to be connected to the case.
He knows that we're on to him, he knows that he's got to come in for an interview. Now, I've spoken with him, we've made the arrangement, so if he then breaks that arrangement, then we'll go to his home address and arrest him.
But it isn't just paper and PCs that have been taken away today. Because at one of the other raid locations, the City of London Police are seizing something much more exciting.
We've just recovered a Ferrari, which is worth in excess of £150,000, which we believe may be evidence of money laundering. As with all acquisitive crime, obviously the assets, we are keen to get hold of those for any future confiscation or compensation proceedings.
It's early days in the investigation, but a boy's toy worth as much as this raises a lot of questions.
Clearly, a car of this value is quite unique, and therefore one could consider that if convicted, this could be the proceeds of crime and used to compensate victims and also be confiscated under the appropriate legislation. And no criminal should benefit, obviously, from their offending.
With £150,000 worth of supercar shackled onto the back of a low loader, it hasn't been a good day for the Ferrari's owner. But IFED and the City of London Police are over the moon.
Yeah, very good day, I think. Yeah, I'm very pleased.
Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £2 billion every year. That's almost £6 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing, and every year it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing 15 fake claims every hour. Armed with covert surveillance systems,
That's the subject out the vehicle.
sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a highly skilled, dedicated police unit,
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
they're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers, and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Coming up, secret filming saves an insurance company from a fraudulent claim worth almost £2 million.
Instead of somebody who could not use their right arm, the footage shows somebody going about everyday life with absolutely no trouble.
A nasty collision between a pedestrian and a bus, but who was to blame?
If the driver's made eye contact and he's carried on, is he saying that he's deliberately run him over?
And IFED execute 20 warrants in their biggest operation this year.
You know him, don't you? I can tell by your answer you know him.
With many jobs, there's a risk of personal injury, although with some, the element of danger is far greater than others. Particularly professions which rely on manual labour, such as building or factory work. For people who do these sorts of jobs, a personal injury claim can be the saving grace in the event of an accident. But in 2010, Royal Sun Alliance dealt with a claim submitted by a young man, which showed that things aren't always as they appear.
Danny Wykes is a young man who was working as a floor layer, and with a colleague, he was unloading a mixer from a trailer. The mixer was rolling down the trailer, but his colleague lost control of it, and so it free fell effectively and struck him on the right hand. So he did sustain an injury to his right hand, but it was relatively minor. It was a soft tissue injury, and it was the type of injury you may expect to heal within, say, a year.
But this was a problem which didn't have any signs of going away.
He went on to develop a condition known as complex regional pain syndrome. That's where somebody has a relatively minor injury. The injury appears to have healed. There's no reason why they would continue to experience pain, but they carry on having a lot of pain.
Complex regional pain syndrome is a serious condition which can be severely debilitating. And Danny Wykes' case was no different.
He claimed that he couldn't use his right hand at all. It hurt if somebody just touched it. If somebody brushed past it, he'd be in agony for days. He couldn't raise his hand to smoke a cigarette. He couldn't carry anything. It caused difficulty with sexual relationships and he had to adopt a certain position. He had difficulty driving his vehicle. He couldn't work. And he did say that he felt like at times it would be better to amputate it because it was so useless. He was effectively like somebody with one arm.
It was quite a claim, and one which raised concerns at Royal Sun Alliance's headquarters.
The claim was made to us, ultimately, as his insurers, and with his company and ourselves, we were very sympathetic and made some payments to him, and in fact, were working with him on rehabilitation to get him back to work.
The lengths that Royal Sun Alliance had gone to in an effort to make life easier for Wykes weren't to be sniffed at.
They paid for adaptations to his car. They provided him with voice-activated software for his computer because he allegedly couldn't type using his right hand. Over the course of, say, the first 18 months, they will have spent tens of thousands of pounds trying to help him to reach a full recovery. By July 2011, he claimed that in fact he was getting worse rather than better, and that the pain was now spreading up his right arm into his shoulder, and he was also experiencing similar pain in his left arm.
As far-fetched as this injury from a single knock to the back of the hand sounds, specialist opinion confirmed that this could be a legitimate claim.
Medical experts, based primarily on his reported symptoms, came to the view that he was suffering from this condition, and so they backed his claim. Ultimately made a claim for £1.9 million of compensation, and this is based on his incapacity, his inability to work and his future earnings, plus a considerable amount of care that he would need in his life going forward.
At almost £2 million, the claim was effectively for a lifetime of compensation. But before they handed over any money, Royal Sun Alliance began having doubts.
There came a point when we began to get suspicious about the level of his incapacity, so we began to investigate the case and deployed some surveillance.
The footage captured by the surveillance unit painted a very different picture to the one that Danny Wykes had portrayed.
Instead of somebody who could not use their right arm and had trouble with their left arm, the footage shows somebody going about everyday life with absolutely no trouble. It shows him driving his car using both hands at the steering wheel, going to the supermarket with his girlfriend, selecting produce from the shelves, loading up the trolley, At one point, he's seen to put his weight through his arms and sort of ride on the trolley. He carries the heavy shopping bags, he unloads bags from the car. He's seen throwing a ball to a dog, wheeling a wheelbarrow, and in particular in November 2011, which is the time that he was signing court documents saying that he was extremely disabled, the footage shows him at what appears to be a place of work, carrying a folded up table in one hand and a double glazing unit in the other hand.
To say that the footage didn't help Danny Wykes' claim ranks as the understatement of the year.
We showed the footage to the medical experts, who then, as a result of that, changed their opinion and formed the view that, that Mr. Wicks was either grossly exaggerating the level of pain or indeed making it up.
With Wykes' claim seemingly in tatters, Royal Sun Alliance sent a copy of the video evidence to his legal team.
When his solicitors received the surveillance footage, they ceased to act for him. They weren't prepared to continue being his solicitors in light of what he was seen doing on the footage.
With no one to represent him, Danny Wykes withdrew his claim. But this story doesn't end there.
I would imagine that he may have thought that he would get to keep the money he'd already had and he would simply walk away. He was on a no-win, no-fee agreement with his solicitors, so he wasn't obliged to pay their costs because effectively he had not won his case.
By this stage, Danny Wykes had received interim payments totalling around £25,000. So if that was the end of it, he'd still have pocketed a tidy sum. But unfortunately for him, the case was far from over.
In a normal case like this, it wouldn't be unusual for the insurer just to cut their losses and walk away. But in RSA, we take a really dim view of people that try and defraud us, because ultimately it affects our honest customers. So we applied to the court for him to be dealt with for contempt of court.
Danny Wykes had gone from claimant to defendant. But even when it came to his defence for disrupting the course of justice, his version of events raised a few eyebrows.
He initially claimed that he wasn't guilty, and in fact, he had lacked the mental capacity to bring the civil claim in the first place, and somebody else should have been acting for him, therefore he shouldn't be held accountable. The court gave him permission to obtain a report from a psychiatrist to say whether this was the case or not, and the psychiatrist concluded that he did have the mental capacity, so that defence fell away. And he then went on to allege that he hadn't read the court documents and he wasn't actually aware that he was trying to claim £2 million. So he tried various defences to get away with it.
After over a year of trying different tactics to absolve himself of any blame, and at a cost of £12,000 in legal aid, Danny Wykes finally appeared in court.
On the first day of trial, he admitted that he was guilty of contempt of court. He said that whilst he had sustained an injury to start with, and when he saw his first medical expert in September 2010, he was entirely truthful. He then started to get better, but he didn't tell anybody that he was getting better. And he admitted that he had signed documents that he knew were false and that he knew that would interfere with the course of justice. As a result, he was found guilty of contempt of court and he was sentenced to prison for 6 months and ordered to pay RSA's costs of the proceedings.
Danny Wykes had stretched the truth, but was now faced with a 6-month stretch behind bars. And his story is a stark reminder that when it comes to fraud, insurance companies are no longer easy targets.
People probably think that there's nothing to lose and everything to gain by trying to get maximum damages. However, there is obviously, as this case shows, everything to lose because Mr. Wykes has lost his liberty.
Still to come, IFED discover what could be promising leads as a nationwide operation is carried out.
We are finding stuff going all the way back to 2010, right the way up to present date.
Road traffic accidents can be a nasty business. They often happen in a split second, and if there's no eyewitnesses, then determining who's at fault is inevitably one man's word against another. This is exactly the situation that bus operator First Group found themselves in back in 2012, when one of their vehicles was involved in a gruesome incident.
This case involved a gentleman who stepped out in front of a bus on a busy high street. The driver's reported that he's had a fairly nasty collision with an individual who's been thrown to the floor. He's sustained some quite serious injuries.
And serious they were. In fact, the pedestrian was lucky that they weren't fatal.
It's caused fractures to his left hip, fractures to his left thigh. It's quite a big bone, the thigh bone. It's quite hard to break. So that in itself is a nasty injury. He's also got some severe bruising and he's got some facial injuries as well from where he's struck the side of the bus.
The man was hospitalised for 2 weeks, but it wasn't long before First Group received a claim from him for compensation. Although his account of how the accident unfolded placed the blame solely at the feet of the driver.
The pedestrian has told us that he is standing behind a group of people. He's looked to the left and to the right. He's seen the bus driver gesticulate towards the rest of the pedestrians to cross the road, and he himself has made eye contact with the bus driver and then stepped out, and the bus has subsequently just driven into him. All told, we're probably looking at around about £50,000.
There was no disputing that this was a horrendous accident, and with a version of events as damning as that, First Group immediately launched an investigation.
The first thing we're going to do is investigate fully, but on top of the compensation, we're also faced with the situation that he's laying some pretty severe allegations against our driver, so of course we want to look at the CCTV footage and interview as many witnesses as we can.
Buses are equipped with as many as 16 CCTV cameras, covering virtually every angle inside and outside the bus. So if the pedestrian's claims were true, then First Group would be hard-pressed to argue otherwise.
The key thing to remember in the third party's version of events is that he makes it quite clear that the driver gesticulates towards the pedestrians and that he himself has made actual eye contact with the driver, yet the bus still didn't stop. These are quite severe allegations we're making against one of our drivers. I mean, if the driver's made eye contact and he's carried on, is he saying that he's deliberately run him over? Highly unusual, and I'm not buying that for a second.
There was only one way to find out what really happened. Unfortunately for First Group, they had the entire sequence of events on camera.
This CCTV footage was very important because it revealed that the statement made by the injured pedestrian was total fabrication. It didn't happen. The best camera view is the camera from the near side looking towards the front of the bus, which clearly shows the pedestrian walking along the path, and for absolutely no reason at all, with no real warning, he just turns right and steps into the path of the bus. The camera in the driver's cab, it shows that there were no gesticulations from the driver.
With evidence as clear as this, the pedestrian's case wasn't exactly what you'd call rock solid.
I would say this whole claim hinges on the fact that this gentleman has said that the driver has waved him across, made eye contact with him, he's assumed it's safe to cross, and the bus has then driven into him. We know that just did not happen.
Just to be sure, let's take another look. As the bus approaches, we can clearly see that the man is walking along the road and is not waiting to cross. Meanwhile, in the cab, at no point does the driver raise his hand to wave the man over. When the pedestrian steps out into the road, it's only when the bus is inches from his face that he turns to see whether it's safe to cross.
It felt very good to actually be able to throw this claim out because we could prove that this chap was just not telling the truth. We don't like people who don't tell the truth. It makes our job harder.
There is a valuable lesson to be learned from this case, and that's to be honest about where the blame really lies before submitting a claim. Because if you're the one who's at fault, then the chances are you don't have a leg to stand on.
I think that despite the fact that he suffered some very severe injuries, I think it's actually disgraceful that he's deliberately tried to mislead us just so that he can get a payout on his injuries. And no one's denying the fact that they were severe, but you can't just expect someone else to pay out because you've not looked properly when you've crossed the road.
In January 2012, the police joined the fight against insurance fraud by forming an elite squad known as IFED, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department.
IFED is a dedicated team that deals with insurance fraud. Whatever insurance policy there is out there, we investigate it.
There is a dedicated 40-strong unit that work 24/7 hunting down insurance fraudsters.
IFED has made over 450 arrests and saved millions of pounds in fraudulent insurance claims, money which ultimately goes back in our pockets. From now on, fraudsters need to watch their backs.
We are out there in numbers. You might get a nasty knock on your door in the morning if you commit this type of fraud.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
It's 5:50 a.m. and today IFED are carrying out a major nationwide sting involving over 100 police officers across the country. Today's operation is targeting suspected fraudsters who make fake insurance claims for courtesy cars provided to motorists while their vehicles are being fixed. With 20 warrants being simultaneously executed across the UK, this is IFED's largest operation this year. DC Jamie Kirk and DS Marcus Allen are heading up one of the many units.
Today is massive because warrants will be executed at home addresses where we hope to arrest the suspects and then move on to business addresses to seize items which will show the level of criminality of those involved.
The first stop for Marcus and Jamie is what's believed to be the home address of the prime suspect.
Good morning. We're officers from the City of London Police.
We've got a warrant to come into the premises, so we need to
just
come
come in
in.
and we'll explain what's happening to you.
But once inside, the team hit a bit of a dead end.
We've got a warrant to search his premises. It's in relation to a chap called... You know him, don't you? You can tell by your answer you know him.
It turns out that although this house belongs to the suspect, the family living here are actually tenants and are nothing to do with the investigation. But that doesn't mean they can't be of assistance.
Do you have a contact number for him? Yeah. OK, can we have that?
They might not have got their man yet, but Marcus and Jamie have been given contact numbers for both the suspect and his family.
Right, we have a warrant here. That warrant has been signed by a judge and that gives us the authority to search his house. There's no sign of the offences we're investigated, no evidence for that. So what we need to do now is contact him. We've got officers at the business address, so if he turns up there to get rid of any evidence, he'll be intercepted, arrested, and a warrant will be done there.
Although the team now have phone numbers for the suspect and his family, as yet they haven't been able to get hold of either of them.
We're going to the business premises where we will wait for office hours and hopefully staff or our suspect will turn up. We will we'll arrest the suspect if he turns up. If staff turn up there, we'll execute the warrant and search the premises for evidence. Through here, then a right at the end.
It's still only 8 a.m, so it's a waiting game for the team as they stake out the offices. But while they're lying in wait, the suspect's family returns their phone call.
My name's Jamie Kirk. I'm a detective with the City of London Police. I came to your brother's property this morning because I need to speak to him and I need to speak to you in relation to some matters. Where's your brother then? Where is he? He must be somewhere. He's gone back home. But where's back home?
It sounds as though the main suspect may be overseas, but his family has given them an address which they didn't know was connected to the case. So Jamie and Marcus are going to leave another team to stake out the office while they chase up this unexpected lead.
Yeah. Right, I don't think we should rest on our laurels. Let's just get round number one. Yeah. Right, shall we go?
Let's go in, yeah. DC Kirk from the City of London Police. Just spoke to you on the phone. I need to come in and talk to you.
The cameras remain outside, but the investigation is progressing well.
The business premises for which we have a warrant there is activity there, so officers have gone through the door at the business premises. They'll secure that, we'll start a search. Hopefully the suspect may even turn up there. In the meantime, we're doing a comprehensive search of the premises here. We've already found some documentation that may be linked to the offence. We found cash in one of the vehicles outside the address and also some money secreted in one of the bedrooms. The person arrested, the brother of the main suspect, has been taken away now. He'll be held at the police station and we'll question him in due course.
IFED have managed to confirm that their main suspect is abroad, so they'll have to wait to get their hands on him. But all is not lost, as another family member, who is also believed to be involved, has been arrested and taken to the local police station for questioning.
We are finding stuff going all the way back to 2010, right the way up to present date. It's around about £90,000 we've managed to identify so far. Just from looking at documentation here, I would imagine that our financial investigators are going to find substantially more than that.
With everything at the house done and dusted, Marcus and Jamie head to the business premises, where they soon discovered documents of interest.
We found documentation that supports the allegations of defrauding the insurance companies. This is the specific claims where we know that the frauds have been made in these names. So if we can get the original paperwork for that, that's great.
It's been a long day with many twists and turns, but Marcus and Jamie are delighted with the way things have gone.
The original was 26 claims and we were looking at around £90,000. I think we're in excess of that. So with everything else today, it's a great job, really.
As successful as today has been, there's a final loose end to be tied, or more likely, collared and cuffed.
Yeah, it's been a great day, successful, achieved everything. Just one thing we need to do now is to arrest the main suspect. Just got some information in that he's flying into the country on Monday. We need to get him early as possible so he doesn't have a chance to speak to others and to maybe destroy evidence. Therefore, I will be there and we will be the welcoming committee when he steps off the plane.
A total of 17 people were arrested across the country as part of IFED's nationwide operation into credit hire fraud. As any animal lover will tell you, getting a pet can be an exciting time. But for breeders, handing over a young puppy or kitten to a new family can be a precarious business, as there's no way of knowing whether there will be any problems with the animal's health. Thankfully, many pet insurers provide breeders with a short-term period of cover.
There's a facility that insurance companies offer breeders when they're selling new puppies and kittens, and that's to put a temporary period of insurance on the puppy or kitten that allows the new owner the ability to take the puppy or kitten to the vet at the earliest sign they suspect a problem. Because most of the breeders are breeding pedigree animals, because there's a purchase price involved, there is the ability, if the animal does sadly die, to claim for the purchase price. So it protects the new owner, ensures the puppy has the best care, and it also, to a certain extent, protects the breeder.
But for unscrupulous scammers, even a short-term insurance policy like this can be used as a means to cash in, which is something that Agria Pet Insurance discovered in 2012.
The breed was a pug, young puppy. So sold at the end of December in 2012, and a few days later it was presented to a vet with acute respiratory problems. Not unusual for a pug puppy. The puppy was seen by the policyholder's vet, and then seen again by the breeder's vet, and sadly euthanized.
Losing a pet is never easy, but in this case it was particularly painful, because pedigree pugs don't come cheap.
Normally pug puppies will be sold maybe between £800 and £1,500, and the purchase price that the policyholder was claiming for in this instance was about £1,500.
It was a hefty loss, but it wasn't just the new owners who were out of pocket.
Our suspicions were that the breeder had a litter of puppies, maybe one or two in the litter. The breed also have usually caesarean sections, so there would have been investment by the breeder just to have the puppies born. So the breeder had money on the table, and if one puppy wasn't saleable because it wasn't well, he was going to lose some investment.
Fortunately, the policy that was in place would cover the financial loss. But as Agria began to process the claim, they noticed something rather unusual.
Our suspicions were alerted with this case because the policyholder and the breeder had the same surname. In itself, that's not a fraud indicator. However, when the claim form was submitted, a letter came in stating categorically that the breeder and the policyholder, although they shared the same surname, weren't related. That's quite important because with this type of policy, if the breeder has sold the puppy to a new owner and issued the insurance, and that new owner is a member of the family, the insurance will be invalid.
Unsurprisingly, Agria began to investigate the legitimacy of the claim.
So we approached the owner and the breeder to just determine they weren't in fact related. We asked them the question, and they denied that they were related, but then they became very evasive, and trying to get hold of them became very difficult.
And as it turned out, there was good reason as to why the owner and the breeder weren't responding to the insurance company's calls.
When we started to probe, when we started to look at the veterinary records, and the vet categorically had got the owner and the breeder down as brothers. When we looked at Facebook and social media, it was very evident that the two were related, and the policy was invalid.
Thankfully, a fraudulent claim had been avoided. But this is typical of the kind of underhanded activity that companies like Agria need to be on their guard against.
I think in this instance, it was an opportunistic claim. I think breeders think that insurance companies are remote and distant, and with the volume of claims that certainly go through with pet insurance, this one will probably slip under the radar. No, it's not sophisticated fraud, it's very opportunistic fraud, it's often not thought through at all. For the individuals who think they can get away with this, we're looking for them.